Chris Hensley is a registered representative of Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer member of FINRA SIPC, investment advisor representative of Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and Houston First Financial Group are not affiliated.
Good morning, everybody. You're listening to Money Matters. I'm Chris Hensley. The time is now noon, or I'm so used to saying 11 a.m., but it is noon now. And we have a fantastic guest for you today. We have with us Cornelia Gamlem. She is the co-author of the Big Book of HR. Now, this is a book that's been out for some time. You've probably heard of it if you are in human resources, but it's coming up on the 10-year anniversary of it being first published. And you know, as a business owner, as a manager, this is something that you have to stay on top of. The rules change, the experiences we all face changes from day to day. And it's a super important topic. We're going to do a kind of a deep dive into the book with Cornelia here in just a moment. Cornelia, thank you so much for joining the show.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. It's my pleasure to be here today.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I want to share your bio with listeners so that they can get to know you just a little bit better here. Now, you are president of Gems Group Limited. You're part of SPHR. You've written on human resource management issues for some time, and you've actually co-authored 4 books, 3 of them with Barbara, who was the co-author of this one. And you spent most of your career with a Fortune 500 HR career. Can you tell us something, maybe a little bit outside of that bio, so that we can know you just a little bit better?
Sure. Yeah, I did. I started started my career in HR with a Fortune 500 company. They're in the IT business. And after about 20 years, I guess it was, I decided time to spread my wings, do something else. And I went off and began consulting. And that was a great opportunity to get, more variety of experience and learn more about what different organizations were doing in the HR space, if you will. And 10 years ago, I had this opportunity to co-author the first edition of the Big Book of HR with a good colleague, Barbara Mitchell. And that kind of gave us a side path, if you will, and took us on this whole journey of becoming authors. And we've actually written 5 books together.
Wow.
We've updated the Big Book of HR twice. This is the second update, this 10-year edition. And we're actually working on another one. I was glad to hear that you mentioned something about business owners, because we've worked a lot with small businesses and helping them with some of their struggles in human resources.
I love it. I love it. You know, I'd be amiss if I didn't ask you, because anytime I have authors on the show, I love to learn a little bit about their process. And uniquely, you've got this partnership that's lasted over the life, at least over the life of this book and several other books as well. How did you get started writing together?
That was interesting, but we were just talking about it the other day. She was approached by the editor. She had co-authored another book with another colleague, and they approached them. They had an idea for a book that was really going to kind of go up against, remember the old Dummy series, and there was a book, HR for Dummies. So the publisher wanted that. Well, Barbara ended up submitting the proposal on her own, and then when they accepted it, they gave her a lot less time than she had asked for. So she came to me and said, "Would you be willing to co-author a book?" And I said, "Sure." And we joked 10 years ago. We said after writing one book together, we're still friends and we're still talking. But the publisher kept coming back to us with more ideas, and that's how the writing partnership really started. Thanks to the publisher that we had. But it was a unique experience to be able to continue doing this, because while we've both been in HR for a long time, we have different areas that we focused on. So we've been able to split our expertise as we've written these books and say, okay, you're a little bit stronger here, so why don't you focus on some of these areas? Like, she knows a lot about recruitment and retention, and that's where she's done a lot of her work. I've done a lot more in the compliance side and in employee relations. So it always gave us a really good balance.
I'm just smiling real big here because when you said they kept coming back to you with more ideas, I don't know what the title was to start at, but there's the big part of it, right? They kept coming back and it
Yeah,
just
yeah,
got more and more.
yeah. Well, and it was funny because we had an idea for another book that we wanted to self-publish that we ultimately did, but I kept going, we're never going to get that book done because it took us 10 years to write that other book. But there were several books in the meantime, so we never really felt that bad about it.
I love it. I love it. Well, I want to get into some of the HR questions there, but one more. Do you have any tips for collaborating with partners when you're working on a book?
Yeah, we've been asked that a lot and have been interviewed on that subject too. And one of the things we've always said is understand each other's strengths. I mean, not just in your area of expertise, but how you work. And we joke because my partner tends to be somewhat of a procrastinator, and I've got to stay on, I know I've got to stay on her and set deadlines. But if you understand how each other work and realize that, we're not all the same. So don't get frustrated because somebody's approach to and their work style is a little bit different than yours. Take some time to understand it. And, we've always laid out some parameters. Again, we knew each other for a long time before we started writing together. But I think if you were going to get into a new relationship with writing with somebody that you didn't really know that well, it's just really important to, to make sure you've got deadlines and parameters and understand who's going to be responsible for what.
I love it. It sounds like a complementing personality type. If kind of understanding that and working together, I love that. Well, so let's dive right into some of the biggie for me as a business owner, and when I wear my HR hat or my manager hat, is how can we turn this great resignation into the great retention? This is something that may not have been on our radar 10 years ago. What suggestions do you have for us?
And it's really interesting that you say that because when we started writing the book 2 years ago, we were just in the throes of the pandemic and we really didn't know what the future was going to bring. And, we had to do some guessing. We had to kind of use some of our best judgments around it. And we also didn't want to write a book that was going to be pandemic specific because
right.
10 years from now, we want people to still be reading this book and picking it up. But,
absolutely.
One of the things that we started to realize as we saw this great shift in people moving away, and leaving organizations and going off to do other things, because the first thing is, why are they doing it? And, some of the reasons are probably something that employers can't address. People just decided, I want to change. I want to try something new. It's time to, to switch careers and see if there's something else out there. And those are the kinds of things that you really can't hold on to somebody for if they're certain that they want to go in a different direction. But it also dawned on us that, we've been talking about retention and maintaining your workforce for many, many years. That's really nothing new. What has happened is with this great retention, it's getting more attention from organizations, and they're saying, wait a minute, we always expected to see some people leave, but now what do we do? And so you really need to shift the focus back to what are your needs as an employer, but what is it that the employee needs? And, initially we were hearing a lot of stuff around flexibility and, making people come back into the office if they didn't want to, or wanting to come back in the office and the office was saying, no, no, no. And some of that is, I think, is the learning process that we're in. And it's part of what is going to change as we go forward. And we are going to move into hybrid workplaces and workforces. And it's just getting used to that. And I think, a lot of companies had a hard time with that, but on the other hand, they were realizing, hey, people were getting the work done. They were being productive. So that, that was one piece of it, is listen to what it is that your employees need, because they've also learned some things like, gee, it's kind of cool to work at home, even if it's a couple of days a week. I can have more balance in my life. I can deal with personal issues and not have to be worried about taking a day off of work or, running back and forth to the office. But the other thing that we've seen growing out of the pandemic is a lot of changes in the way work is being done, a lot of new jobs emerging, a lot of new technology coming out. And one way to address people leaving is what do I do to keep them to stay? A lot of people just want that opportunity to learn something new, and I had said that earlier. People were going, well, maybe I'll try something else. Well, give them an opportunity, train your employees, reskill them, because that's going to be the thing of the future. A lot of the skills that they've had, not so much that all of them are becoming obsolete, but there's a lot of new technology that they need to learn and need to learn how to work with that technology. So give people an opportunity to grow within your organization and be willing to meet them where your needs are as well. Let them know what's going on. But as always, the most important thing if you want to retain employees is listen to them. Pay attention to them. Ask. It's so easy to do simple surveys these days. Just to get some immediate feedback to say, hey, what kind of adjustments do we need to make that will meet everybody's needs?
So I'm making a lot of notes here because that was a lot of information right at once. I mean, I wrote ask really big in all capitals letters there, because listening to the employees, asking them, what's important. Kind of the word retention, came up there as far as, keeping them. From some of them, they were going to make this change no matter what. I deal with clients that are university professors, and they went from lecture type format to a screen with 20 people. They're not sure if they're listening or not. That kind of sped up a lot of those employees of the universities retiring. So some of that, it's going to happen. But some of the things that you just mentioned, the benefits of having that work-life balance, being able to take care of personal issues, just different descriptions of what we thought the job might have been in the past, offering to reskill. I'm a financial advisor, but you could be the best teacher. You could be the best financial advisor in the world. And if you're not able to adapt to this technology, to this new world we're living in, it's not going to help you very much. So,
yeah.
Huge, very good information there. Well, we can go right into the other stuff that I like to talk about, leadership and management. What are the most important skills a manager or a leader needs to have?
First and foremost, they need to have good communication skills. You can, and I've worked in the technology field for many years and saw some brilliant people, but they tend to be introverts, and they don't know how to approach their employees and talk to them. And that can be a death sentence sometimes, because you just, that's where you get into this big unknown. And I don't know what the employee wants. I don't know what the employee needs. And if you're seeing an employee who perhaps is having a problem, maybe they're having a problem performing, it might be something as simple as, they need a little bit of coaching and training. They may need some new tools. They may not have everything that they need to do the job. But if you're not comfortable sitting down and having some conversations with people to find out what's going on, that's really going to impede your ability to be a great manager. The other thing when we talk about being a good manager is you've got to give your employees frequent feedback. We've seen this movement in recent years away from what used to be the traditional performance appraisal, where once a year you'd sit down, you'd fill out. I always just refer to it as the report card that you do every year. And sometimes that's the only time an employee would hear from their manager. And anymore, and particularly with the younger workers that are entering the workplace, they not only crave frequent feedback, they demand it. And if you're not letting them know how they're doing, that's another thing around retention. They're going to go, I'm out of here. You're not giving me an opportunity to grow. So I think good communication skills and that ability to sit down and to listen, to ask those good questions of employees one-on-one. And it becomes so much more important now that we're moving into this hybrid work, because you're not going to, even if most of your people are going to be in the office part of the time, you're still not seeing everybody every day. And you really need to kind of keep your finger on the pulse, if you will, of what's going on and how your employees are doing, how they're managing.
So I love that, the idea of communication. Before I was an independent advisor and a business owner myself, one of the companies I worked for at a time, the CEO, one of the things that stood out to me is when he was in the office, he would come out of his corner office and he would just walk around the floor and say, what's going on, and shake everybody's hand. I don't know if he was a great CEO or not, but I do remember that part of it, and I thought that was really, really cool. And so for a leader or a manager to have that communication, it's key. One of the other things that you just mentioned was that report card or that feedback, being able to, not leave that question mark out there between you and the employee as far as how things are going, and giving them that direct feedback pretty quickly. All of that sounds super important when it comes to being a leader and having those communication skills. Anything that you can think of, because I'm saying all of this as I'm saying that out loud, we're still working remotely here. Anything that you would adjust for not having that physical presence with the employees, for managers or leaders if they're working remote?
Yeah, there are sometimes some very simple things that you can do. Pick up the phone from time to time. We're all suffering from Zoom fatigue and having these, video conference meetings. Just pick up the phone every once in a while and check in and say, how are things going? You may want to have some weekly check-ins if everybody's still working remote. And sometimes not so much to talk about work, but, maybe 10 o'clock on a Monday morning, when it adjusts for time zones and all. How was everybody's weekend? What was something great that happened this weekend? Just to lighten the mood a little bit. I've talked about doing virtual happy hours or just, things like that. One thing that we were talking about, particularly early in the pandemic, when everybody was so stressed and hadn't really settled into this new way of life, send your employees, and I know this sounds old-fashioned and old school, send them some quick notes. Just not even an email, a handwritten note. And that can be so powerful, to get something from a boss that maybe is personalized a little bit. And I always talk about a VP that I had when I first joined this large organization. And he had the habit every year at the holidays, he sent holiday cards out to everybody on, all of his direct reports. And there was always a personal message in it. And I remember the first year I got it, first of all, I was blown away. I wasn't expecting it. But then, that there was something about me that he remembered. And the irony was he was on the West Coast, we were on the East Coast. We had some split offices at that time. And so he didn't see me every day. And it just sent such a powerful message to me about his leadership style, but also showed that he was a human and that he viewed his employees as being human. So I think something like that, yeah, this happened years ago and I still remember it, and I can still remember what that first one said. And it was just, just such a powerful reminder of how important your employees are to you.
So you said that you started, I think, that's an old school thinking. There's nothing wrong with old school.
No, there isn't.
Because I get so excited when I get a piece of mail that's actually addressed to me and somebody's taken the time to sit down and write, correspondence out anymore. Used to, we would write letters. We don't do that anymore. when I'm hiring, even the ability to somebody to put together long form emails or put their thoughts in writing is huge. More and more as we, text each other and get to kind of, the abbreviated version of the emails, it's hard to find that. And that kind of goes right into our next section about talent acquisition. As a manager, what are the best practice employers should know about finding the best talent?
That's an area that is so swiftly changing as we're looking at this great retention. Um, we were doing a meeting not too long ago, and somebody was talking about how they were talking to some of their clients, and applicants just wouldn't show up, or they would hire somebody and they wouldn't show up on the first day of work. And it's like, what's happening with all this ghosting that's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And it starts to make you think that, as organizations, we were so used to doing things a certain way. And there was almost a mindset of, we've got a job and people should be thankful that we have a job for them, and kind of put the onus on the applicant. And we're seeing very quickly, as companies are saying it's hard to attract people, there's a labor shortage. What are some of the things that we have to do differently? So I think it starts with putting yourself in the job seeker's shoes, and recognizing that, if you see a good candidate, get in touch with them right away, and then follow up with them. Don't let the whole interview process fall into some kind of a black hole. Because there used to be a lot of that going on. And something else that I read recently over the weekend, in one of the many things that crossed my email is, again, talking about sending people little notes. It always used to be, well, what about the applicant, would be expected to stand out. So send a thank you note to the people that interviewed you. And this person was talking about maybe flipping that around, because you need that person perhaps as much as they need you. It really is a two-way street. So I think looking at doing some things like that help you to really attract a really good candidate and keep them engaged from the very beginning. And I think that's one of the things that's fallen by the wayside, is we haven't paid enough attention to the candidate experience. This is somebody that we're inviting into our organization, and hopefully that you want them to come in and have a good impression and stay around. One of the other things to do is, when you've got a good team that you've assembled and you're looking for people, don't be afraid to get the word out. Now, you want to cast as wide a net as possible. So you make sure you're getting, the best talent that's out there. But, a lot of your staff may have their own professional contacts, and they may have their own networking abilities. So, don't be afraid to tap into that as you're out there, and, looking at different places where you can tap into talent too. The job boards have certainly been, I think, a godsend to the recruiting world in the past 10 years.
So we are right here bumping towards the end of the half hour. I only touched on just a tiny bit of what is the big book of HR. We literally just touched on like 2 or 3 topics. Definitely for listeners who'd like to find out more about this book, what's the best website for them to go to?
The best website is so easy. It's www.bigbookofhr.com. And on it, you can find more information about my co-author and I. We do a weekly blog, and that's on there. There's information on there about every one of our books, so you have an opportunity to explore a little bit more. And if you want to connect with us, there's a contact form. You can get in touch with us directly, but all of our social links are there. LinkedIn is a great way to connect with us. We're there a lot. And we would love to hear from everybody.
Absolutely. And if you're at the gym or you're driving right now, don't feel like you have to write that down, because we will have that in the podcast notes. So you can go right to the podcast notes and we'll put the links on there as well. Cornelia, is there anything that I forgot to ask you that you'd like to leave the listeners with today?
Hey, you're right. We could talk for about another half hour, but just one of the things, when you get a copy of the book and peruse it, at the end of each chapter, we've got some tips that kind of summarize the chapter. And the book was written in a way that, if you're looking for something particular, it's not a book you've got to read from cover to cover, in one sitting, if you will. Look through it. It's in a number of different sections that deal with different areas of human resources. So we think you'll find everything you need. Hopefully you'll find a lot of your answers there.
Perfect. Cornelia, thank you. Have a good rest of the day there. Thanks so much for being a guest on the show.
My pleasure. You too. Thanks a lot, Chris. Bye-bye.